Hi everyone, this is Nikki from Happily Lost. Today we'll be diving into one of the sub-themes for my research. This one will be the definitions of orgasm. And just a reminder, my research was on orgasmic capacity and experience for trans women post-genital surgery. So before we get into this, please press the subscribe button and the bell to be notified of any updates. Give this a thumbs up or thumbs down if you like, and leave a comment down below. Don't forget I have the Happily Lost Facebook, Instagram and website and merchandise site. And if you would like to support this and other content, I also have a Patreon. So let us get into it right after this. First things first, I would like to remind everyone of what I said in my previous video on my research, which I carried out, on a few important things to consider. I will include that list here to remind you, and if you have not watched that video, I will include a link in one of the corners. But anyway, firstly, just a reminder of everything. Nowhere do I claim that the participants are typical to a wider community. The results are not generalizable, partly due to the methodology used, which was a qualitative research, and part due to the small number of participants which I interviewed. So this was not necessarily a representational sample of experiences. It is all very likely that the participants' experiences are atypical. We cannot say either way that their experience is normal. Secondly, in my research paper, when talking about participants, I use pseudonyms. However, here in the public sphere of YouTube, I will take things a bit further to protect participants' identity. I will generalize their experiences, and if I do talk about the individual's experiences directly, I will depersonalize and will not use any name, no pseudonym, nothing. They will just be referred to as participant. Thirdly, this research was by far bigger than I had even imagined, and so we were not able to cover as much as we would have needed to. Fourthly, I would like to thank the participants for sharing their experiences and stories with me. It was very valuable and moving. Fifthly, and finally, I do not believe and do not suggest anywhere that reaching an orgasm in any sexual activity is an absolute must, nor is it and should it be the ultimate goal of sexual activity. I cannot stress these points enough. Okay, on with it. Next, I would like to define what the theme is that this sub-theme falls under. The broad theme is orgasmic experience, which has several sub-themes, them being definition of orgasm, orgasm after hormones, relearning how to orgasm, how their orgasm changed, and orgasm after surgery. So in the main theme, we are looking at the whole spectrum of orgasmic experience across their lives and how it has changed due to hormones and surgery, along with the relearning as they experience orgasmic changes, if any. Some do not. So this particular sub-theme of definition of orgasm is focused on what they consider and define an orgasm to be. Okay, let's start by going through some of the ways the participants in the research described and thought an orgasm was. Two things to note, yes, I do love my lists, was that not all participants had a clear idea of what an orgasm was. In fact, some participants had no clear definition of orgasm. The second note was that their definitions were not restricted to the purely physicality of muscle contractions and ejaculation, or not ejaculation. They included aspects of emotional and psychological experience and release. Generally speaking, the participants understood an orgasm as the ultimate peak of sexual pleasure, which could be experienced through a series of physical and psychological events. Some participants described their orgasm as euphoria, a sense of warmth and excitement. None of the participants described orgasm as a purely physical experience, but some participants did include physical events in their definition of orgasm. As one participant described it, she had two types of orgasm. One which was an intense, pleasurable feeling which then goes away, and the second was similar to ejaculation. Common amongst definitions was the concept of experiencing some type of pleasure which was missing pre-surgery. One participant went on to indicate that an orgasm was an explosion. It was a build-up that leads to a burst of pleasure. However, as I hinted at earlier, not all participants had a clear or could define what an orgasm was for them. Some resorted to a strict academic definition that revolved around physical sensations because they had no other way to describe it. But the important point here is that they stated that they did not know what else to say other than the strict definition of sexual climax. Whereas a few participants seemed to be bewildered by inconsistencies in their orgasm, both in their experience of orgasm and their ability to reach orgasm. So they resorted to describing an orgasm as a massive spectrum, and that they were not 100% sure what one was in the first place. This experience was in stark contrast to their experiences of orgasm pre-hormones and pre-surgery, where it was obvious they had reached orgasm. Now, let us take into account some of the literature on orgasms and the experience of orgasm. A sizable proportion of the literature, and I'm not saying that all literature is this way, I'm sure there is some literature out there which say otherwise. But when it comes to a male orgasm, it is focused on muscle contractions, ejaculation, and a release of sexual tension. However, there are other forms of orgasm which can be experienced for men. For example, stimulation of the prostate and tantric practices. These practices have been suggested to produce a different orgasmic experience, which is akin to a female experience of orgasm. When you look at the academic textbooks, when it comes to the female orgasm, this has not fared much better, where the majority of the research has investigated physical changes leading up to and during orgasm. Some literature has gone on to try and to quantify psychological changes and effects of orgasm for both males and females. But as I've found within my research, there is a lack of consistency in the psychological changes and effects experienced during orgasm between participants and between research teams. However, this is the danger of this type of research. Coming up against an undefined concept which varies between people, which also relies on a degree of self-awareness on a concept, often not thought about or considered. Additionally, any predefinition we may have for an orgasm before we start the research may not fit everyone else's definition of orgasm. And it may also limit their expression of what their experience was in the first place. Enough said on that. What is consistent within my research and other literature is that the participants' orgasmic experience was unremarkable compared to everyone else's, whether that be cisgender or transgender, and that their experience was similar to other people's experience. Additionally, the orgasmic experience was consistent with previous research into trans women's orgasmic experience pre and post hormones and surgery, where there was a shift from one gender experience to another gender experience. What was distinct within my research, and other researchers have likely done this too, is that I did not predefine what an orgasm was, which meant that participants could not base their answers off my predefinitions. Instead, I sought their definitions of orgasm, thus bringing in a societal understanding of orgasm, in that their interpretation of orgasm was based on their interaction with society and dialogues and their own experiences of orgasm. So what does this say about society and how orgasm is talked about and treated? Well, I never said I had all the answers. In fact, at the end of my research, I ended up with even more questions and very little answers. But given the inconsistencies and uncertainties within definitions of orgasm, then perhaps we as a whole need to consider how an orgasm is discussed and looked upon. After all, some people are shamed for experiencing and or talking about an orgasm. Some people are considered to have the right to experience an orgasm, while others are considered they should not be experiencing an orgasm. I will remind you what I said at the beginning of this series and also at the beginning of this video. An orgasm is not the be-all and end-all, nor the ultimate goal of any sexual activity, regardless of gender. And I will keep plugging these important points in each video, time and time again. Anyway, that brings it to the end of that sub-theme. So this is just a reminder, if you like this content and would like to see more on motorcycles, art and sex-related stuff, and photography too, don't forget to press the subscribe and bell to be notified of any updates. Give this a thumbs up, thumbs down if you like, and leave a comment down below. Then there is also my Facebook, Instagram, website and merchandise site. Links are down in the description. And until next time, bye.